Hey you guys, sorry that I can't be there today. And I know we're gonna have to wait and do our Super Bowl tomorrow instead. So we will do that when I get back. But otherwise, I'm going to enjoy staying in my bed and you guys can plow through and learn more about the new deal. I'm gonna do this really quick because I just ran out of cough drops. So on, when was the last time we even went over notes? What, Thursday? I guess we went over a few on Friday. But we talked about what some of the things are FDR is doing with the New Deal and how after he gets elected again, or sorry, before he gets elected, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but he is starting his second New Deal. Oh no, it's trying to shut me out. Okay, we're good. But after his first 100 days getting the first New Deal going, he started the second New Deal that was meant more to try and end the Great Depression rather than the first New Deal was just meant to hurry and provide relief. So we're going to talk about what some of the things are that are happening after the second New Deal gets started. So first thing we're going to talk about is the workers and just some of the things that they're doing to try and get better wages and better working conditions. But the CIO, that stands for Congress of Industrial Organizations, is a union. And their goal is to represent some of the lower paid and diverse workers in America. And this is really different than other organizations. There were quite a few before it that were focusing more on just helping out more of the skilled workers. And so the CIO comes along and they're just trying to help everybody. And after they go through their whole ordeal of getting started, they form the United Automobile Workers Union. So that becomes a subgroup underneath the CIO. And their job is specifically to help out workers who are working in the automobile industry, even more specifically those who are working in the factories. And they first begin with a factory in Flint, Michigan, and it's a General Motors factory, and they have what is called a sit-down strike. Now, a sit-down strike means that all of the workers, they have to first join the union because the union promises that if you go through with this strike, we will make sure that you get your compensation. We'll make sure that you are able to get better working conditions and better wages, but you have to go through with this strike and join our union. So this union organizes their sit-down strike. What they do is they decide they are not going to leave their workplace, so they don't leave the factory until the settlement is reached. Now this is different than a regular strike. A regular strike, everybody refuses to come into work. A sit-down strike means you go to work and you just sit there. You just sit down, you refuse to work, but you refuse to leave. And so that presents a whole different set of problems for GM. It lasts for 44 days. And GM at that time was the largest company in the world. So for these 44 days, they really were kind of focusing more in on Michigan, more so than anybody thought they would before. And that's why it got so much attention, is because it lasted over a month, and this huge, massive company was trying to make sure that these workers... My husband keeps looking at me, and he's distracting me, and I'm losing my train of thought. But regardless, GM finally... he's just watching The Office over there, feeling all cool. Anyway... GM, largest company in the world, and they finally agreed to recognize the UAW, that's United Automobile Workers, just because they were able to finally get their attention. A lot of people were really, they were really awed by this. They had a lot of respect for them because for the first time there were these low-class workers that were able to get the attention of the biggest company in the world. And this leads to other union successes. So there's a lot of unions out there. There's a lot of teacher unions. Pretty much any job you join or go to, there's some kind of union. Now, if you join a union, usually it costs money. But if you join that union, then they promise that they will fight for your rights on behalf of you. So there are definitely benefits to it. And if you are interested in unions, then by all means, go and do your own research. But that is all we're going to talk about with that. But this is the first time we see a sit-down strike, and you guys need to understand what that is. So if you are confused about a sit-down strike, then I will talk to you when I get back. Now, after this whole sit-down strike happens and workers are starting to get better wages and better working conditions, FDR wins re-election in 1936. So this is going to be his second term in office. He gets 61% of the vote. that is a huge margin to take over. His opponent only gets about 30%, and then the remaining percentage goes to just a third-party nominee, and they don't really usually get too many votes. But FDR wins the election, and 61% is really considered a substantial amount to win by. So he enters the presidency hugely popular, and he decides that his main goal is to fight against the Supreme Court, because they had gotten rid of a lot of his programs, most notably the NIRA. And that is not one that we have really talked about too much, and it's not part of our Super Bowl. So really quickly, the NIRA, that is the National Industrial Recovery Administration, their job was more so to help out industries rather than just the common people. So they focus more on industries, but they were regulating a lot of interstate commerce. And the Supreme Court, in a court case, ruled that FDR didn't have the power to regulate interstate commerce, and so they declared the NIRA unconstitutional. And he's pretty upset about this. And after that, they just kind of start to declare a lot of his stuff unconstitutional. One that a lot of people were upset was the AAA. That's the Agricultural Adjustment Administration. That is part of our Super Bowl. So we will hear more about that when we have our Super Bowl tomorrow. But there is a part of that they declare unconstitutional as well. So FDR gets really upset about all these different things becoming unconstitutional. And he decides that he's going to do something called packing the court. So FDR goes to Congress, and he has this big old speech talking about a plan he has to help out the Supreme Court judges. Really, it was a plan to lessen their power on the sitting judges. A sitting judge means those who are the judges at that moment, so they are actually sitting in the Supreme Court. Not like at that very moment, but at that point in time, they are the ones who are acting as Supreme Court judges. So he says that he's going to help them out because many of them were elderly and overworked, but really it was going to help him out. So FDR wants to add 6 new members. It's a 9-member court, and he says that he wants to add this additional 6 to help out the justices. And he justifies it by saying that the Constitution never says how many judges the Supreme Court can or can't have. And so he's totally justified in saying how many judges he wants to be a part of that. And he also knows, he does not make this clear to Congress, but he knows that the judges he would appoint would be supporters of the New Deal. That is one of the powers the president is granted, is the president gets to pick who the Supreme Court judges are. And so naturally, he is going to pick people who will support him. All the critics of these challenges, oh, there's a typo there, I didn't notice that. But it's just called this challenge, these challenges, so it's supposed to be these. Challenges to the New Deal, they called it court packing, meaning that he was trying to pack the court with people who supported him. So he was just trying to cram as many people in there who supported him rather than sticking with the 9-member court. Now, FDR probably could have gotten this passed. He was hugely popular in Congress. Everybody really supported FDR. But to his luck, at least, the court began to support some of his other programs and were declaring them constitutional. It started with the Wagner Act. And is that one of our... I can't remember if that's one of our Super Bowl ones or not. But we will talk about the Wagner Act a little bit as well when I get back. But that's one of them that they say is constitutional. And so that kind of starts this train where everyone says, okay, maybe this is constitutional. And so that's really helping out FDR. And then one of the judges decides to resign. So FDR gets the chance to appoint his own. But through this whole thing, it really weakened FDR's popularity. So he's really popular when it starts out, but his court packing really starts to decline his popularity. Another problem that happens to FDR is that in 1935, 1936, everything's improving. So his New Deal, it's really starting to make some changes. People are starting to get back to work. Unemployment is rising. Yeah, unemployment rates are rising, meaning that there's less unemployment. So, oh, sorry, I said that backwards. It's decreasing, so there's less unemployment. But with this economy better, FDR decides that the best thing to do is to start cutting back on the government spending so the deficit isn't so huge, because they're getting really far into debt at this point. So he starts to cut back on the spending. The Federal Reserve Board, they're the ones who determine a lot of the stuff going on with their economy, but they're the ones who determine interest rates. And so they decide at the same time to raise their interest rates. So it turns into kind of this seesaw affair where FDR cuts back on spending, the Federal Reserve raises interest rates, and that makes it hard for all of these businesses to expand and to grow. And then customers, I mean, they want to encourage them to borrow more money to buy more of their goods, but their interest rates have risen, so now the customers can't afford it. And because FDR cut back on the government spending, he's not creating new government jobs anymore. So all those government jobs he created through the New Deal, those aren't being created anymore. And so people are starting to lose jobs again. And so then unemployment begins to soar once again. So I've got this graph for you, and that's kind of what's happening is that this is the year 1933. So at that point, 33% of the population was unemployed. That is a massive amount. That is what? It was about 13 million people in 1933 were unemployed. Now, after 1933, this is kind of when the New Deal was getting started, it begins to slowly decrease. And by 1937, it reached a pretty low point of their unemployment. And so their unemployment begins to decrease again. And now they've got it down to about, probably like 7 million? Oh yeah, that is 7 million. So about 7 million people were unemployed rather than this 13 million. And then all of a sudden, right in here, this is where these conditions are starting to take a downturn. It pops back up, and then we see it decrease right here when World War II starts. So you can kind of see this chain of events just happening as the unemployment begins to rise and fall. So if you want to look at that graph more, then by all means, go get it out of the book, and you can dissect it to your heart's content. But with that, oh look, that is the end. So you guys are free to do your study guide. If you need, excuse me, if you need to go further than what the notes give you answers for, then you are on page 366 in the book. That's where the chapter starts from the very beginning. The Great Depression covers 2 chapters, so just be aware of that. 366 is the beginning of the first chapter. So anything you are missing in the notes, that's where it's coming from. But other than that, use your notes, answer the study guide. You should be working on that the rest of the class and be angels for the sub. And I will see you all tomorrow, and we will have our awesome Super Bowl. And yes, I do have prizes, so y'all better be ready to debate to your heart's content.